it is really hard to know how to do this video. I know what I'm going to say, roughly, but I don't really know how I'm going to say it. I don't know what kind of feeling this video will end up having. So you're going to see some stuff, and I'm going to explain some stuff that I need to explain because I need to be honest on this channel with what's happening and everything. I don't know how it'll end up looking, but here goes.
Ja, jag har inte pluggat jättehårt hela tiden, men nyligen har jag vad skulle jag säga? Nyligen har jag upptäckt? Nej. Så jag upptäcker, eller jag har upptäckt. Nyligen har jag upptäckt.
Ja, eller vad vill du säga om du tänker hela...
Okay, så nyligen...
My name is Lamont, I am from Australia, and that clip there was me trying to speak Swedish and, as you can see, struggling. Now you might think, well, maybe that's after a short time of learning, 6 months or a year, or maybe 2 years if you were taking it slowly. Unfortunately not. That clip that I'm going to insert will be from the 3.5 year mark. And it was right after this lesson that I made what was for me a pretty drastic decision. See, if you haven't seen the name of this channel or if you haven't guessed from it, I also speak French, and also not that well.
Il y a 3 semaines que j'ai commencé. Et j'avais une formation, j'ai eu une formation de travail.
Pour le travail?
Pour le travail. J'ai eu une formation pour le travail. Et...
Now, whether those clips show it or not, I don't really know. I'm trying not to be overly modest, and I'm trying not to be boastful. I have deliberately selected clips here, both in the Swedish and French, which show me at moments that I'm struggling to speak those languages. There are better moments, especially in Swedish. Sometimes I feel quite conversant in Swedish.
Om jag tittar på till exempel en YouTuber på svenska, då kan jag förstå nästan allt. Men om jag gör samma sak på franska, ibland är det bara 50%.
Ja, precis, jag förstår.
Men om jag tittar på liksom en TEDx-talk på svenska, ibland kan jag förstå nästan ingenting. Men på franska kan jag förstå nästan allt. Så det beror väldigt mycket på vad de pratar om.
The fact is that I could pass B2 exams, and for those of you who are not familiar with the system, B2 is basically level 4 out of 6. I could pass those exams in both languages. So it's in a way undeniable that I do speak them, but both of them are very noticeably uncomfortable for me. Everything I experience through them, whether I'm speaking or listening, is like it's behind a veil. It's a thicker veil for French, but both languages very noticeably not comfortable. I don't feel happy at home in them. And for over 2 years now, I've been trying to study both of them at the same time. And I did have a video planned where I would go through all the things that I did to try and get around the fact that I was basically doing the wrong thing. But the fact is, it's nowhere near that complicated. I was using one ingredient more than anything else, and it was denial.
Aujourd'hui, je veux vous parler d'un sujet assez complexe. C'est d'apprendre deux langues en même temps.
This was some strong denial. I even made a video in French about how to learn 2 languages at the same time. And truth be told, it was just a video to help me improve my French. That's why I did it in French. And it's great that it was in French, but it was still 100% pure denial. I was denying, one, that my Swedish wasn't anywhere near as good as I had initially set out for it to be when I started learning Swedish, and 2, I was denying how long it would take me to become properly proficient in both these languages if I continued studying both at the same time. But mostly, 3, I was denying my own reasons for continuing with this inefficient system. So denial got us here, so it's time for some brutal honesty. what were my main motives for continuing to try to learn Swedish and French at the same time? Number one, boredom. After exactly 1 year of learning Swedish, all its most shallow secrets had been revealed to me. All the most obvious things that a language can hide from you, that veil had been lifted. So I thought I understood it when I stumbled into learning French. Now, a more well-grounded, stable person would have admitted that their Swedish wasn't as good, and they would have continued to work on Swedish until that was at a high level. But not me. I was a wannabe polyglot. I thought, yeah, this is easy. I can just keep studying French and I'll just keep working on my Swedish at the same time. Because, like I said, I was bored and Swedish's novelty had worn off for me. It wasn't as fun anymore as it had been initially. But at the same time, my level in that language was really just a novelty, because I run into so few Swedes who can't speak good English that there's really no point to the level of Swedish I could speak. It was just a party trick. Okay, so boredom is why I started learning French, but why did I then continue for 2 years trying to learn both at the same time, even when really deep down inside I knew that it was a bad idea? Well, that brings us to reason number 2, which is pride. To admit to myself that I should not have started learning French would be to admit 2 things that I didn't want to. One, that I'd been impulsive and impatient and bored and childish to even start learning French. And 2, it would be to admit that my Swedish was actually really weak, whereas if I went on speaking French and Swedish, then I could sort of pretend, go on in this fantasy world where I kind of spoke both languages, never having to admit that both of them were really quite bad. And the third reason is what's called the sunk cost fallacy. I'm sure you're familiar with this. It's the idea that once you've put enough time or money into something, it becomes imperative that you continue going with that thing so as not to waste what you've already put in. I couldn't give up one language now. I'd put way too much time and effort into both of them. So I kept trying to learn both at the same time. I tried every productivity tip known to man. I tried getting up earlier. I tried having different days of the week dedicated to studying different languages. I even tried different weeks of the month dedicated to the different languages. I tried not reading in English anymore because I thought that time would be better spent reading in French or Swedish. I significantly cut down on YouTube time in English and started watching a lot more YouTube in French. And look, all of these things are good things. I'm now much happier with the amount of time I spend watching content in English, which is a lot less. I've been spending a lot more time in a target language every day. Lately, that's been over 3 hours a day. It's not as if I wasn't getting anywhere in both languages, right? I think you can agree that at 3 hours a day, even splitting that between languages, was making progress. So I've made a lot of positive changes from doing this, but I couldn't help feeling after just so long that this 3 hours a day would be so much more valuable if I would just be able to put that into one language over a period of months and keep it in that language 3 hours a day for the whole time. Eventually, the weight of everything, all my thoughts around this, Matt versus Japan, I did an interview with him and his level in Japanese and everything. Eventually it was all just too much and I thought, I have to stop this. I'm going to drop one of my languages. So you've probably realized by this stage that it is Swedish that I've decided to continue with while I put French on hold. There were a bunch of little pieces of this to go into that decision for it to be Swedish. It wasn't any one big thing. It certainly wasn't because I was already more proficient in Swedish, because I had already spent 180 hours this year on French. So French was catching up very quickly, and it could well have been French, but the main thing was that I'd been getting a lot of questions on this channel about how to learn Scandinavian languages and things around Scandinavian languages, or specifically Swedish, and I realized that I'd be able to make much better content for this channel if I focused on getting that language, which is much less common for an English speaker to study, up to a high level. So that's what I'm going to do. But if you're a French speaker, fear not. This channel has always had speakers of different languages and learners of different languages following it. It's never really been specifically about those 2 languages. I just thought that name sounded cool. So it will continue to be the same kind of advice, except that now that I'm deciding to go really deep in on one language, the advice is going to be a lot clearer and a lot better, because you're going to be hearing from someone who has experience in starting the language, getting up to a certain level, not that high level, hitting the wall, hitting that motivational wall, and then having experience getting over that and eventually getting to a high level, or at least that's the plan. So I think all the advice on this channel, the language learning advice, is going to be much better and more specific and just more helpful for everyone than it ever has been before, whether you're learning French, Swedish, or a totally different language. My French will inevitably drop off a bit, and I've just had to learn to live with that. And you know what? I'm okay with that. It's not going to be like years and years before I come back to it. I've already got a very solid base in Swedish, and like I said, I'm doing a lot, so I'm getting better quickly, and it won't be years and years before I go back to French. But whenever I do, I will have to dust it off, sure, but I won't have to start from scratch or anything like that. And really, I'm as pumped as anything for this decision. It's been just over a month since I made this decision for myself, even though I haven't actually sort of officially announced it. But I've already done almost 100 hours since that just over a month. So like I said, more than 3 hours a day. And it's been so good. It's been so much easier, so satisfying to just go deep on that one language. I've been watching stuff, I've been reading stuff, I've been taking like 4 lessons a week. I am dreaming in Swedish. I know some people say that to flex, but it is a thing that's happening regularly now. I've noticed pronunciation improvements. Things are just going better now. So I'm very happy that I've done this. And if you're one of those people who is learning lots of languages at the same time, and you've got different goals in different ones of them, I just want to leave you with something. There is not a shred of disrespect from me to you about doing that. Some of those people studying 7 or 8 languages at the same time, are people who have gotten me to where I am today. So I am not throwing any disrespect your way. But if you've ever had that feeling of like, I just wish my German was that little bit better, I just wish I could get my Turkish to that next level, whatever it is, I have 2 words for you: do it. It's actually the most fun that I've ever had with a language since I started as well, just diving fully into that. I've been able to experience things like I never have before. And if you're worried about what will happen to your other languages, they will wait. Okay, they really will. If you haven't even put enough time into them that they won't just drop off completely, then that doesn't really matter because you haven't given that much to them yet and you can just restart. But if you've really given a lot of time to them, then they'll hold. I mean, not perfectly, obviously, but they will hold out for them. You won't be starting from scratch when you go back to it, and you'll get that amazing feeling that I've had the privilege of feeling over the last month, where I only have to focus on this and it's improving rapidly and it's awesome. I'm going to say this, it's super cheesy, so be warned, okay? I have felt like French is cheering me on in my Swedish studies. I felt like, I said it was cheesy, okay? I felt like before, French was always annoyed because I could never fully commit to it. I was always sort of dividing my time and I just didn't feel happy about being in either of them because I was like, well, maybe I should do some French today, maybe I should do some Swedish today. Don't split your attention like that. I know it sounds gross, but the languages don't like it, or at least you feel like the languages don't like it. They're always having to compete for your attention. You actually feel so much fresher, or at least I have, just giving yourself to one language. Okay, so I know that was schmaltzy as, but anyway, it's out of the way now. If you're interested to see what happens with my Swedish and what I'm kind of up to exactly in it, firstly, make sure you're subscribed, obviously. Secondly, go over to the community tab and check out the poll that I put there. It should be 4 or 5 options. It's basically my half of the agreement with my audience that if they got the channel to 10,000 subscribers by a certain time, which they did easily, then I would do this challenge. There's going to be different options. They're all going to be pretty intense. I want to see which one you guys are most interested to see, and there will be at least one video at the completion of the challenge going into all the detail about what it meant for me and how it impacted my language study and everything. So thanks guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, even though it's a bit rambly, and I will see you next time. Hej då.